last year?
Yeah.
Remember, didn't we have to do that one over in the Mesa?
Which one?
We had to redo it. Remember that?
Oh yeah, because yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
All right. So, anybody near and dear to you getting this flu virus going around?
Nope.
Well, thank God, no.
Yeah, there's some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. We got a little bit lighter turnout tonight, and that's okay. People that need to be here are here. That's what it's about. And yes.
No, I was just praising.
Oh yeah, right on. You're set.
Amen.
Eat up.
Eat up.
Hey, and how about the Kansas City Chiefs, right?
Hey, there's prophecy behind that.
There was?
There's prophecy behind that, yeah.
Oh,
You have to go
we like those little arrowheads. Anyway, I can't root for the San Francisco 49ers because they beat my Denver Broncos 20 years ago, 49-0, so in a Super Bowl. So, and that's one resentment I'm never writing on. All right. So what I'm going to do, Pat Alcoholic, and so grab your big book. We're going to look not super quickly, pretty quickly, on Bill's story as a recap. And then I'm going to do a couple of the pages. I'm going to do page 17, 18, and the top of 19. And then Leanne's going to do 19, 20, 21, 22, and top of 23. That's the way it's going to roll tonight. It'll be fun. All right? So Bill's story, I can never quite get this across the way what I feel at my heart. But when Bill got sober, no one was getting sober. People were dying routinely. The medical community, the psychiatric community, the psychology community, the religious community, no one had an answer. They tried the Temperance Pledge, which took 50 years for prohibition to go into effect. It was an abysmal failure. They rescind, or whatever you call it, retract the prohibition. And Bill gets sober in December of 34, like 4 years after prohibition is removed. I think it was like 1930 prohibition was taken off the books. And it was a nationwide experiment to try to fix the drunk problem. And it didn't work. And the best of the best are saying, Bill, we don't have a solution for you. You're going to probably die. Or you're going to be locked up, or, wait for it, wet brain, insane. That's really a winner. So those were the choices. There wasn't any Hazelton, there wasn't any BBA, there wasn't any big book, there wasn't any steps, there weren't any sponsors, there weren't any people that you could look around in the community and say, he got sober, I'm going to follow Tim. Tim knows how to get sober, I'm going to do what Tim's doing. Everybody's looking at everybody else and no one can figure it out, and they're all dying. So when Bill Wilson was struck sober in December of 1934, after some miraculous events that we've talked about, it was as if God of the universe came down into human and gave us some relief. Because I'm here to tell you, without the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would be dead. Had people not shared the truth about this program and were not pussyfooting around it and said, this is what you have to do if you want to live. If you do this, you will have a spiritual experience and you will be recovered. And you will want for the rest of your life to share this message to anybody who will listen because of what God's going to do in your life. And I didn't believe him. And it happened. Here I am 17 and a half years later. I'm more excited about the program today than I was last year. Next year, God willing, I'll be more excited about it in 18 years, right? And the reason, because God expands our horizon. God expands and grows us as we take on these principles that are outlined in this book. Now tonight, they're really clear when we get into there's a solution. They're going to spend the next 38 pages, starting at the page 17, all the way till we begin how it works, digressing and saying, hey, before we start telling you our solution, we want to make really sure you understand what a real deal alcoholic is. We want to give you every chance in the world to self-diagnose yourself. Okay? double whatever sentence that was. Bill Wilson started it off. So they got together before they wrote the big book and they said, hey, who should be in the beginning of the book? Should it be Dr. Bob? He had 6 months less sobriety than Bill, or should it be Bill? Bill, Bob. Bob, Bill. Dr. Bob was super shy and not into limelight, not into publication, not into publicity. Bill, there wasn't a stage he didn't like. There wasn't an audience he didn't want to wow. And in the midst of his, some people would say, defects of character going on, he crystallized the message of what it looked like to recover. So for 8 pages in Bill's story, from pages 1 through 8, if we take a look at it, Bill's telling us his history. He's telling us his history that he cannot, in basic language, he could not manage his emotional life. Every time he got into difficulty and uncomfortability in society, every time he faced a new hurdle in his life, what was his answer? It was a drink. And it worked. It worked for Bill. When he got uncomfortable in his skin, when he was getting ready to be shipped off to Europe, and he's with people and wealth and mannerisms and everything else that he had no familiarity with, he's totally uncomfortable, he has a Bronx cocktail, and it just sets him at ease. Do you remember the days when the drug or the drink worked and it put you at ease? Yeah. And then for the rest of our using, we sought to hit that ease and comfort once again. And the more we drink and the more we use, the less ease and comfort there is from the substance, and more dis-ease and discomfort there is from living life. Yeah. And it squeezes us down, and we watch Bill's progression where he has to be more than he was. He has to be number one man. And so he gets out of the service and he goes to law school. He goes to night courses. He goes to work for a surety bond company that tries to root out fraudulent transactions on Wall Street. He figures, I could do this Wall Street deal. I could do it better than the Wall Street guys. So his fierce determination to win was going on. Remember when your willpower worked? When you were fiercely, man, I'm going to nail it. I'm going to live life. I'm going to pull it all together. It's going to work. This alcohol, this drug's never going to get me. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to beat it. And so it starts causing him some troubles, but he's not thinking alcohol is going to kill him. He's not thinking that it's going to take him down, because he doesn't understand that it's a physical allergic reaction to a disease. I can will myself all I want. If I have stage 4 esophageal cancer, I better go get some treatment. He is in stage 4 of alcoholism, and he is in a place where his life is becoming increasingly unmanageable. His sweet relationships, and we're going to talk about the alcoholic illness inventory on page 18 tonight. It's a really, if you've been sober for a while and you've done this work, it's a super good spot check inventory to check out where you're at. Whether or not you need to go through the work again, whether you need to do it like, I usually look at that at least on a quarterly basis, maybe more, just to see where am I at with Karen, my kids, my job, where am I at emotionally, where am I at with relationships, and not what I feel. I want to look at the results. So Bill takes himself into the crater. He is going to die. He knows it. Ebby shows up at his house, and Ebby's got religion. Ebby's got God. Bill doesn't want God. Bill doesn't want religion. But he's looking across the table at Ebby and going, what you are and who you are is different than anything you've ever been. You've never been this Ebby. I've never seen you cleaned up. I've never seen you with your eyes bright. I've never seen you with hope. I don't know what to do with you. How did this happen? He said, Bill, in essence, what he said behind the scenes, wow. I went to this Oxford group, and they taught me about God. Yeah. And I surrendered my will to his power bigger than me. And then I made a confession of all my dark woes, which we call our step 4 and step 5. And then I went out and I made amends to people that I owed. And I got straight. And then I'm attempting to carry this message to you because they said to me that if I don't serve people for the rest of my life, I won't be able to keep what I got. Note to self, Ebby relapsed several times throughout the rest of his life. So this spiritual health that we get as a result of doing this work is not guaranteed for a lifetime. It's contingent on what? The maintenance of our spiritual condition for the rest of our lives. And it's about making sure my car is in working order so I could travel the spiritual path, to go to the far places, to have the exciting life. So Bill got it. Bill figured that out, and he outlined in the last chapters, pages 9 through 16, he outlines the steps that he took. And then he talks about the fact that he and Lois discovered almost by accident, they discovered that to have recovery, it was vital that one alcoholic work with another alcoholic for the rest of his life. So you don't have to raise your hand. But if you've been sober for a while and you've gone through the steps, and if you don't have a sponsee, and you haven't put your hand up to get a sponsee, you got to take a look at what's going on. That's not to guilt you, and it's not to shame you. It's, has the spiritual experience you've received as a result of going through the work thus far set you on fire that you cannot wait to share this message? See, the commonality with the first 100, they couldn't wait to share the message. All right? Any questions on Bill's story? I mean, it's a sort of a big 30,000 foot view, but any questions on that? Anything is coming up? Okay, let's jump into There Is a Solution. Okay, so pull open your big book, turn to page 17. And the first question out of the box is, when I looked at my alcoholic condition, my drug addiction, my active using, my active illness, did I get to a place where I was as hopeless as Bill? In your core being, not because it's the right answer, but in your core of your being, did you get to a place where you're as helpless and hopeless as Bill? Now, a lot of you guys, I know your stories, and yeah, I could answer the question for you, but the problem is we live in delusion. It's like the White Knight, Black Knight of Monty Python. Do you remember that? Man, you guys are too young and I'm too old. But the White Knight and the Black Knight are fighting, and the Black Knight is just getting his butt kicked. The White Knight's cutting off left leg, left arm, right arm. He says, look, give up. You got your life still. He says, it's just a flesh wound. That's the way we roll. We could be in the gutter, rolled and put away. I mean, we never say uncle. And the biggest drawback that we have, and the biggest asset that we have, is one and the same. Our fierce desire never to say never. Never to say quit. Never to say I'm beaten. This is the one place in our life that we have to say, God, I give. Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob got to a place where they said, I give. I got to a place in my life, I give. And I was out of pride, didn't care, and it got to the place where whatever you tell me, whatever you're doing, it works. Now we're going to start seeing this painted story where they hint at us that physical sobriety isn't enough. It's just a beginning. When I came in here, the only thing I ever wanted was just tell me how not to drink. Just tell me how to not pick up a drink, because I can't manage that. I cannot manage not picking up a drink on a daily basis. My step one experience tells me without a shadow of doubt, I will pick up a drink. 17 and a half years sober, I will pick up a drink tonight, if God's not standing between me and the drink. That's my truth. That's a fact. How did I get to that spot? It's by getting into these considerations. So on page 17, the first thing he says, are you as hopeless as Bill? And then we answer the question, yes or no. If it's yes, cheer up. The first 100 said, we're as hopeless as you, and we have almost 1,000 of us have recovered. Almost all of us have recovered. And then it says, don't think it's just a rich man's disease or a poor man's disease or a woman's disease or a straight man's disease or a gay person's disease. It is everybody's disease, every nationality, every way of life. Gender doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The commonality of this disease, is blind. This disease is blind. It only has one goal, and that's to kill you and kill me. He said, so we are like passengers after a shipwreck. Think of the Titanic. You got people that were at the captain's table and the steerage, which is at the bottom of the ship, never saw the light of day going across. And they're blown away that they have a solution to this peril, this common peril. It says, from the steerage captain's table, and like the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in the escape of disaster would not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril. A peril is a fancy word, but really what it means is I am exposed to danger and destruction, to be permanently maimed. Common peril. Does that sound like our disease? All right. That's only one element of this cement. If you will, we're building a foundation of recovery. Common peril. Do each of us in this room, we said we wouldn't even mix. I come in sometimes in a business suit, and I see guys all tatted up, and I see piercings, and I see this, and I see that. I see some things I don't even know what they are. And yet, when we start talking, it's a heart language, and I go, I'm one of you. You're with me. We get it. And that commonality, that fellowship is harmonious. We all join together. And it says common peril wouldn't keep us together. Going to the bar, telling us our woes. I can't stop drinking, and my life's falling apart. My kids don't want me. My job's I'm fired from my job. My wife's kicked me out. My husband's kicked me out. It's terrible. My body's failing. Yeah, it's bad. That's bad. They're sitting at the bar. That's bad. Sitting at dealers. That's bad. But there's no solution.
Yeah.
There's no solution. So identification is good, but if we don't have a solution, it's going to be short-lived.
Yeah.
Common solution. It says we're going to join it with fellowship. We're going to join it with brotherly, harmonious action. Brotherly, what does that mean? No one's higher than the other person. We're side by side, shoulder to shoulder. There's no hierarchy. There's nobody saying, I've got it all figured out. I'm going to pontificate, you listen, and then give me pats on the back after. It's not that. We're sharing a common experience. And I fist step routinely with guys that are maybe a year sober. I'll hear sometimes the people say, oh, I would never do that. Really? Why not?
Yeah.
If they're recovered, they're recovered.
Yeah.
I don't care about time. Time doesn't matter.
That's good.
Time doesn't matter. Time isn't the indicator of where my sobriety is. My spiritual connectedness to God is where that indicator is. And can you see it in my lifestyle? If you came walking in my life and in my head for 24 hours or for 24 weeks, would my life say I have this solution? Could you imagine if every thought you had was going across a little jumbotron? Wouldn't that be great? We would get so honest so fast. It would be amazing. You know, the longer I'm sober, the dumber I get. I mean, I'm a little scared to say that, but I think it's true. I think I fried my brain so much out there. I'm losing cells at a faster rate than most of you. And my wife just sort of laughs at me, but I'm sort of a goof. I used to have this attitude that I have it all going on. I'm really cool. I got this. I'm suave. I'm debonair. Blah blah blah. I'm not any of those things. And the more I do this work, the more I don't even give a crap. Just be. And the more I rely on this God experience, the more I see what that harmonious brotherly action looks like. There's no substitute. So then it goes right into the next page, on page 18, that's that alcoholic illness inventory I was talking about. See if you guys could identify with this. Unlike a person that has cancer, if you say to somebody, I have alcoholism, I'm an alcoholic, their response to you is going to be stand back, turn, that's nice, and walk away. Most times. Even today, 80 years later, 85 years later, it's a little bit iffy. I know that when I my current job, everybody in my company knows I'm an alcoholic. But man, I remember the first guy that outed me at my company, and he was an active drunk, and he says, I'm going to go talk to Pat because he's a recovered alcoholic and maybe he could help me. And he's telling that to my CEO. I hadn't told my CEO that I was sober. See, and that was like I've been working the same company for 7 years. I'm going, yeah, he can talk to me. You know, because I still had a little bit of that stage character. I want people to see me just so. I was scared what they would think. Cancer. Oh, Pat, I'm so sorry. What can we do for you? It's a different reaction. Why? It tells us. Annihilation of things worthwhile. This is line 6 in the first paragraph. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it goes... See if you can identify with any of these things. Annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. So basically, I'm a plague. That's the truth.
Wow.
My kids, my 2 wives, one at a time, did not want anything to do with me.
That's crazy.
My boss, my coworkers, my partners didn't want anything to do with me. By the time I got sober, didn't have to worry about relationships because I didn't have any. And that's not drama, that's the truth. Annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It touches every life that I touch. I'm a giver. I am a giver. I give away my suffering to others. I want to make sure people participate. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends, disgusted employers, warped lives of blameless children. 17 and a half years later, I'm still repairing damage with my kids. I've made amends. I'm clean on my amends from like year 5 on. But I am, and I don't believe in the term living amends. I don't know where that, I think it's craziness. But I do believe that our lifestyle ought to emulate this love and this tolerance and this way of life that is attracted to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's attracted to my kids today, but I'm telling you, there are still pockets that I'm still playing, how in the world do I ever measure up and fix this deal?
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they said this volume, and I'm almost done because Leanne will be coming up here in a second. A couple things. We wrote this volume to inform you and to comfort you if you're suffering from alcoholism. We want to tell you what your condition is so you could do something about it. And we want to comfort you along the way. We want to come alongside you with brotherly affection, really, love, and say, we understand, we're going to go into the cave with you. We're going to come out together. And we're not scared of anything that you're doing. We're not scared of anywhere you've been. We're going to join with you. We're going to comfort you. That's part of what this book was about. We won't discuss our problems with anybody. Did you get to that place where you're so ashamed and so guilt-ridden and so disgusted and so hopeless? There wasn't any use to talk to anybody about anything anymore.
Yeah.
How many times did you say you were going to quit? And you couldn't pull it off. And you meant it. Swear to God, I will quit today. This is it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Never again. And you mean it from the bottom of your soul. And you cannot pull it off. No one wants to hear about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell anybody about it anymore. I'm completely shut down and shut off. But the X, look at the squiggly lines. That's expensive text. You guys all heard the story.
Yeah.
It's expensive to write the squiggly lines. They had to think about it. But the ex-problem drinker who has a solution, who is properly armed with the facts about himself, that's referring specifically about understanding the 3 parts of our disease. That I have an allergic reaction to the drink whether I want to or not. That I have a mental obsession that drives me insane to go pick up the drink when I know when I'm stone cold sober it's going to kill me. Or it's going to put me in places I don't want to be. Again. And the spiritual malady, I have no answer. I am restless, irritable, and discontent. I am uncomfortable in my own skin, and I want you to be uncomfortable in your skin too. I'm a giver. I'm a giver. And that's the deal. And I know the truth about myself, and I also know the way out. It says a person like that has the facts about himself says he could generally or she can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be done for that person. If I don't know that you understand what I'm going through, anything you say is, I'm not listening. I'm not engaged. I'm not buying it. I might be courteous. I might wait till you're done. Thank you very much for sharing. But I am not relating. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The man who is making the approach, the word sponsor is never used in the big book. This is where I'm going to end. I'm going to do this paragraph and turn it over to Leanne. Sponsorship is never used in the big book. They didn't even know what that word meant. The sponsor really was a terminology that in the group in Akron, they would sponsor a new man to come to their meeting, and they'd come to the door and says, has he taken the steps? Yes, I vouch for him. I sponsor him. He could come in. That means they've gone at least to a place where they're going to a step 3 experience. Okay? The guy that's working with him, his whole attitude, his whole way of life, her whole way of life, not that she or he doesn't have problems, but their whole way of carrying their life shouts at the person suffering, that person's got the answer. Another way we'd say is, I want what they have. The person doesn't have a holier than thou attitude. Just a sincere desire to be helpful. No fees, no dues, no payments, no axes to grind, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we find most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds, and walk again. Our privilege, once we go through this process and we get out on the other end of this, is for you to be that humble servant to go inside the dark cave in the same terror and torture that you came out of, and not for 1 nanosecond forget where you're at. And never, but never, but never play the card, get in the back of the room, you went and relapsed again, you're not any good. You know, why don't you just get your act together? Why don't you just pull it up? Why don't you just get some, you're not ready, you're not done. And all this other crap that we say sometimes in rooms of AA. There's ignorance that Leanne's going to go into behind that statement. Thank you guys very much.
I'm cheering you on too.
Janie. All right. Leanne, alcoholic, recovered alcoholic. Hi, Zoomers. All right, so thank you, Pat, for covering the first half of the homework, which is we're still in the physical allergy. So after tonight, we'll be out of the physical allergy in the book, and I'll show you where that's going to end. So I want to go over to page on page 19. It's going to talk about what we need to do to recover. Many could recover if they had the opportunity that we enjoyed. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to task our combined experience and knowledge. This suggests a useful program for anyone concerned with the drinking problem. Of necessity, there will have to be a discussion of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. And the book is going to go on to say we wish we didn't have to talk about those things, but those are the things. that we're going to need to talk about, especially the spiritual side of this, because it's going to tell us exactly on the next page. On page 20, it says, it is the purpose of this book to answer questions specifically about the disease the disease of alcoholism. So our lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon constant thought of others and how we must help meet their needs. Even though right now we're still in the physical allergy, we're still in step one, we're still in the very beginning. As you notice, if you read the first half of There's a Solution, it's really emphasizing on what? Working with others. Yeah. What's the solution for me to be recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, for me to be recovered from alcoholism, not cured of alcoholism, but recovered from that hopeless state of mind and body. It's going to say it over and over again. It says recovered in the big book 19 times, and it never says recovering until we get to the family after one time, because the family after is always recovering. We can be recovered from this. So it's going to continually tell us what we need to do in order to be recovered. And it's like Pat said on the previous page, we got the squiggly lines or the italics that took a lot of work. They really wanted to emphasize that. We have to understand that's neon signs, that we need to work with other alcoholics. I know that when I first came in to the rooms, that's the last thing I thought about doing. That's the last thing I ever wanted to do. I heard things in the rooms of AA that this was a selfish program, that I selfishly work with other alcoholics because it helps me stay sober. That, by the way, is not selfish. That's selfless. When I'm taking time out of my work day, out of my family time to work with another alcoholic, yes, is it helping me too? But is it something that I want to do? It's definitely not something I always want to do. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's probably not going to be something you always want to do, but it's something that, how many can relate? Let's be honest with each other, right? That's not selfishness. So if the book is going to go on to tell me that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems, how can this be a selfish program? Let's smash that right now. Okay. It's trash. It's smashing the trash. All right. You may already be asking yourself why it is that all of us became so very ill from drinking. Pat talked about how people have cancer and everyone feels sorry for them. We have alcoholism, and there are some misconceptions with people, it's going to talk about later on this page, that just is basically ignorance, even today, with the amount of knowledge that we have about alcoholism, because everybody thinks that, we did it to ourselves. And yes, in the beginning, we did do it to ourselves, but we're also going to learn that I didn't ever have any power, choice, and control once the what affected me, the allergy, once the addiction, once that physical reaction that I don't metabolize alcohol the way they do. They can't understand that because they don't feel it. So of course they are going to think that it's something that I put upon myself. So it's my responsibility, right? It becomes like cancer is not my responsibility, but for some reason, like smoking, that's a response. You get lung cancer from smoking. That was your responsibility. You put that cigarette to your mouth. You got lung cancer, right? But nobody is like standoffish with you. Why? Because when you get cancer, you're not a Tasmanian devil ruining everybody else's lives. But that comes with alcoholism, right? Because we don't just ruin our lives, we ruin the lives around us, right? Doubtless you are curious to discover why, in the face of the expert opinion, to the contrary, we have recovered, past tense, from a hopeless condition of mind, right? Because I'm not obsessing over the drink anymore, and body, because I'm not putting the alcohol in my body anymore. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, wait a minute. It says, if you're an alcoholic who wants to do this one day at a time, no, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say if you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it one day at a time. It doesn't even bring that up. I understand. Let me just back up here. I understand the one day at a time thing. When you're first coming to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's really all we have, right? But if I've got 5 years down the road, or 5 months down the road, 5 years down the road, I'm not taking this one day at a time anymore. I'm done for good and for all. And you can be in that state of mind for good and for all. I can be delivered from this state of mind. I can be delivered from alcoholism and recovered, right, from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. for the rest of my life, and I can say that. But there's some things that some steps that we have to do. We'll talk about that later. What do we have to do? That's what the book is. It says question mark. What do we have to do? It is the purpose of this book to answer the question specifically, and it's going to tell us what shall we tell you we have done before going on to detailed discussion. It may be well to summarize some points to see that. How many times have people said to us, like, I could take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Right? Or I mean, why don't you just drink like why don't you drink like a lady? Why don't you just drink like a gentleman? Right? Oh, that fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you just try beer and lay off the wine? Right? We hear this all the time. How many times I think today people recognize alcoholism a little bit better, but you got to remember when this was written, like they would ask these questions like, why don't you just drink 1 or 2 drinks? I mean, still people have that thought in their head that don't really understand alcoholism, but I think there's some education that's come behind alcoholism today that a lot of people understand. Look, they can see alcoholic behavior, whether they've had people in their past or family members, but they can understand alcoholic behavior. But back then they had nothing to relate to. They had no big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They had no AA meetings. They had nothing. But I asked myself that question. How many of you asked yourself, why can't I just freaking leave it alone? You know, I think the question is not whether other people are asking me that question, because I asked myself this question. What the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I freaking stop? Why can't I drink like a lady? I would pray and ask God, please God, make me a normal drinker. I can't understand why I can't just maintain or control the amount. Like, that was baffling to me. As much as it's baffling to other people, that's not as important as how it was so baffling to me. So that was always the question. So now these are commonplace observations for drinkers, right? And still today. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. And it is ignorance and misunderstanding. They don't understand. Like Pat was saying, like, I don't want to go tell people like in my company or that while I'm coaching, you know, that I'm a recovered alcoholic. I mean, I do separate that. Today it's a little bit different, you know. I mean, not because I've got a little extra time, but I think today I like people to know, because you never know who's going to ask. You never know who's dealing with a problem. You know, I coach for a living. I coach runners. I coach marathon and half marathon runners, in addition to having a career that puts on race events. But, you know, typically in that realm of work, you don't really run into a lot of alcoholics, you know, but I did. Seriously, you know, you usually, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't alcoholics that drink and run, because obviously I was one of them, but I did, you know, and because I was open one time with that, I was able to help somebody in my club that had been in and out of the rooms, and had I not been, you know, open about that, she might have never gotten the help that she needed today. But it's a place where we don't yet necessarily like to discuss it, because there still is some ignorance around it, right? There's still some people that will judge you for it because they don't really understand it. And there's people out there now that there's been a lot of knowledge and a lot of knowledge and information about alcoholism that do know and that do understand, and give you a lot of praise for, you know, oh my gosh, you've got, you know, X amount of time, you got 30 days sober, you got 30 years sober, you know, people love you for that, you know, they think it's great. But there is some misunderstanding and ignorance behind that, especially back then when this book was written. The next part of this book I find probably the most descriptive about what drinkers look like, and not just alcoholics, but different drinkers. And I personally started off, I went through all 3 stages. It's going to talk about a moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. Moderate drinkers there's a wide range of moderate drinkers, right? I mean, seriously, if you look at a moderate drinker, it says here, moderate drinkers have little trouble giving up liquor entirely, or if they have a good reason for it, they can take it or leave it alone. They can take it or leave it alone. A moderate drinker isn't always someone who just drinks once in a while. A moderate drinker could be someone who has a drink every day. They just have a drink every day. It's no big deal, right? So there's a wide range and a wide spectrum of what a moderate drinker can look like. How many of you can sit back and think about people that you know that really qualify as a moderate drinker? right? I can think about someone like my husband's a very moderate drinker. You know, he could have a beer every single day or a glass of, he doesn't drink beer anymore because it puts weight on him. So he'll maybe have a glass of wine, you know, every night. And I don't even know. There's no change in him. Nothing happens. It's just one glass of wine. It's fascinating. I know. I shake my head. I saw his glass. I'm going, oh my God. Yeah. They're moderate drinkers, you know, and there's some moderate drinkers that just like my mother who might have a glass of wine once a year, you know, just there's a big variety of moderate drinkers, right? I only know a few, don't know a lot. How many of you know the next description? And then we have the certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. Like if I saw someone who was drinking, I mean, think about this. If you knew someone who'd been drinking so much and they died, I would classify them as an alcoholic, right? But listen, if sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or a warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can stop or moderate. And the key is he can not just stop, he can moderate. Can I ever moderate? Is the question I need to ask myself. There's a wide range of hard drinkers too. You know, there's your college drinker that, you know, like the girl drinker that could drink every guy under the table. I can drink you all under the table, right? I was, you know, a hard drinker for a while. You know, I didn't have the physical allergy, didn't take hold of me back, you know, in my party days, right? When it was still a party. Hard drinkers can drink like us. But given sufficient reason, they can stop or moderate. I think that's the biggest test, is if you can moderate. Marty Mann is mentioned in this book, and she says if you have some questions about whether you are a real alcoholic or not, go have 2 drinks a day, every day for 1 month. I'm not suggesting that anybody do this. I'll take it to meditation today. But back then, that was the test. Like, they didn't have rooms of like this. They didn't have Big Book Awakening workshops where we could tell you to take it to meditation. I don't need to go out and test that today. But I can take it to my mind and I can say, if I just put 1 drink or 2 drinks, why 2 drinks? Because sometimes it takes a little bit more than just 1 drink to set off that allergy, right? Sometimes it just might take a little bit for that allergy to get set off. That's why maybe sometimes if you drink or if you eat, I don't know, food with maybe wine in it or something, and you don't even know, that's why maybe the allergic reaction doesn't get set off. It's not enough alcohol. It's not enough alcohol. But there's a wide range of what the hard drinker can look like, you know? He could drink once a month and just drink, and like, you know, drink for 3 or 4 days straight and then just stop. Or there's the drinker that can drink every single day, hard drink, like just pound it down every single day, but they don't have the physical allergy. Now the next description is almost 2 pages, and there is only one kind of real alcoholic, and that's the kind of alcoholic where the physical allergy has been set off. And the description the book is going to give you is going to be circumstances and things to look for and characteristics to look for, but it doesn't necessarily describe what the alcoholic looks like. But what about the real alcoholic or addict? Okay, I'll use that. He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption. When? Once he starts to drink. Once he starts to drink, he begins to lose all control. Here are some of the things that to look for. Here's a fellow who's been puzzling you, or here's a girl who's been puzzling you, especially when his or her lack of control. He or she does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. She's a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This for me is like, when you drank, were you the same person when you were drinking than when you were not drinking? I thought I was. Like, I had I thought I was, like, nobody knows. And every single time, like, Brian would come home from work, and he could tell if I had 2 glasses of, like, I would just be starting. Like, I would just be getting the party started. I would just be, just be starting it. And he could walk in and he could look at me and he'd get shit. just get pissed off. He could just tell. I'm like, wow, how does he know? Like literally 95% of the time he could tell because something physically happened in me that didn't happen in him. He could have the same amount of alcohol that I can have, and he physically does not turn into a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I completely change. I see that today with my dad. My dad is a full-blown alcoholic. I can see with him, right now he's in the hospital. He's been in the hospital he's 80 years old. He's been in the hospital for a month and a half and with no alcohol. I do not know how he did not go into detox. Actually, I think some of the reasons why he's having some physical problems right now is because there was some detox that happened, and we did let the doctor know that. But he has been completely dry for over a month and a half, and he is a completely different person. So I always could tell when, even on the phone, right? How many of you have family members or maybe you even, like you get on the phone, immediately go, oh my God, you just know that person's loaded, right? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? If I experienced that. Does anybody else relate to that? Did you guys think that you didn't change? Like, I thought I was perfectly fine. Like, didn't think that there was anything wrong with me until my husband started videotaping me when I was drinking. No, he did. It really used to piss me off. And he used to take pictures of me, even in a photograph. I have photographs of me that I actually keep to this day to remind myself. And if you guys want to see it, I keep it on my phone. I have a picture of what I looked like 14 years ago, almost 15 years ago. And you wouldn't even recognize me. It's just me sitting on the couch, just a photograph. So you can imagine what the videotapes look like. I'll show you the picture later. It's embarrassing, but whatever. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet give him a drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. How many of you can relate to that? Okay. He has a positive genius for getting drunk at exactly the wrong moment, right? Was it ever a right moment? Was there ever a right moment? There was never a right moment, especially when you were a daily drinker. It was never a right moment, particularly when some decision had to be made or engagement kept. That's when I would drink. Oh my God, I got to go to a party. I'm getting drunk. Oh my gosh, I have to go to a business meeting. I need a drink, right? He or she is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything else except alcohol. But in that respect, he or she is incredibly dishonest and selfish, right? Selfish. How can this be a selfish problem if this was my problem in the beginning? Wouldn't that be something they would want to get rid of? She often possesses special abilities and skills and aptitudes, right? One of the things that they say about alcoholics, and I don't know if you've heard this, but I believe this to be true, that a lot of us are above average in our IQs. So we got that going for us, right? Yeah, we got that going for us, right? We have promises. Because when we're not drinking, man, we show like promise. We show promise, right? We are smart fucks, right? She uses her gifts to build up the right outlook for her family and himself, and then pulls the structure down over the head. And then just like tornadoes coming through. We've got to get all drunk, and then we've got to ruin everything. Why? Because we have a physical condition that when we put alcohol in our body, we can't stop. Too much alcohol turns us into what? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and we completely change. We're a completely different person from the time before we started to drink until the time after we started to drink. Destruction comes down, but we can't stop. We can't figure it out why. It's this vicious circle that goes in our head, and there we go. Then we wake up the next morning, and we're laying there in bed, and then our husbands or our wives go, do you remember what you did last night? Like that was the first words I heard every single morning, and I never could remember because I was a blackout drinker. Concealing alcohol all over the house. Why? Why did we put those little stupid bottles everywhere? It was so much cheaper to buy a big gallon, and I'd buy all those little bottles and we'd hide them everywhere because we just didn't. Now we were trying to hide it, right? We were trying to hide. So I didn't even understand why I was trying to hide it. But I know that I needed to drink. I know that I needed to go into the closet and drink, and thinking that maybe if I drank not in front of him, that he wouldn't figure it out. And he figured it out every single time. And he knew every single time, like if I didn't have a drink, You know, he could tell when I didn't have a drink, and he would be so happy when he'd come home from work and I hadn't been drinking. That was a rare occasion, but he was, he was happy. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-power sedatives, or as things got worse, I began to use meth because it kept me, I was able to drink a lot longer and stay awake. And he kind of couldn't tell sometimes on meth when meth was working. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to the doctor and gets some morphine or a sedative to taper off. Whatever we use to do. This is by no means a comprehensive picture, but it kind of gives you a general idea. And what I want you guys to see is I want you to see how the physical allergy takes hold here, because that's really what we're in right now. That there's a physical thing, a phenomenon going on in our bodies, which makes us behave absurdly, which makes us act absurdly, which makes us lose all inhibitions to do anything right. We lose all our moral and philosophical convictions. It doesn't matter, because we all we need to do is we just need to get right. I was not trying to get drunk towards the end of my drinking. I didn't want to get drunk. I just wanted to get right. The problem was I just missed the mark. I kept missing the mark. I didn't know how to stop once I started, and I didn't know why I couldn't stop once I started. Now I know why. Is because I have a physical condition that I don't metabolize alcohol the way the normal person does. Two types: the moderate drinker and the hard drinker are not alcoholics. And I believe to this day that we have a lot of people in the rooms of AA that are hard drinkers. They're hard drinkers. And for them to hear slogans like "just don't drink no matter what" works for them. Meeting makers make it. That works for them. And I've heard people with 20, 30 years get up and say, well, I just don't drink no matter what. I make the decision every day to get up and not take a drink. And I go to meetings every day. I'm like, I don't want your life. That doesn't relate. That doesn't register with me. And that's why 4 years in the program, I was like, I don't understand this. Just don't drink no matter what. Because I drink no matter what. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I drink no matter what. Right? So this is a comprehensive picture. Why does she behave this way? Or he behave this way? She's allergic. Because we have a physical allergy. If hundreds of experiences have shown her and him that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it that she drinks again? Because she's allergic. He's allergic. Because she's got a physical addiction to alcohol. Why can't she stay on the water wagon or he stay on the water wagon? Because she's allergic. And because it's accompanied by mental obsession, which is the next page and next week, right? Because there's a mental obsession. We get on the water wagon for a little bit, or we stay dry, like what the book says, water wagon, stay dry, clean, whatever. But then my mind wants to take me back, right? We're going to learn that that's the crux of our problem. What has become the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters. Like, I don't have a problem with coffee. I know that sounds weird. I don't have an addiction to coffee. I have a cup of coffee every morning. Sometimes only a half a cup. Sometimes no. Sometimes just forget about it. Like, I would never have that attitude towards alcohol. Like, I always knew where my drink was, and sometimes I'll pour a cup of coffee. I'll get so busy and not even think about it. That's just wrong. I know. I'm weird like that. I don't have an addiction to caffeine that way. I just don't. Thank God. Thank God. I know that, I'm a moderate coffee drinker. I have a drink. See, I have a cup of coffee, half a cup of coffee every day, and I don't obsess about it, right? I'm a moderate coffee drinker. How many other moderate coffee drinkers do we have? Yay! Right. Now, let's talk about sugar. That's a different subject, okay? Perhaps they will never fully understand. Perhaps there will never be full questions. There will never be full answer to these questions as to why some people are allergic and some people aren't. Why does a physical allergy, why do some people get allergic to peanuts and some people don't? Why do some people get allergic to alcohol and some people don't? I don't know. Maybe we never will know, right? Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why, once the certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from the drink, he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men, right? Dry me out for a little bit, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better, right? Dry me out a little bit, and I'm starting to like kind of think a little more clearly. Dry me out a little bit, and I'm not worried about who's in my rearview mirror anymore. A lot of good things happen when we first get clean, right? And when we first stop drinking. Like I don't have, right? I had a sponsee who called me the other day on the phone, and a cop was pulling over. She's like, oh my God, I'm not like worried that I've got dope in my car. Like, you don't worry about those things, right? Good things start to happen, immediately. But it's much like just drying out and just not drinking. If that's the solution, then none of us would need to be sitting here tomorrow or sitting here today or tomorrow or forever, right? Just not drinking and just not using is the beginning, but it's much like peeing on yourself on a really cold day. It feels really good and warm in the beginning, but when the wind starts blowing, it's not a long-term solution, right? The long-term solution, by the way, that's in your work, by the way. I think that's in your work. It's my favorite. So, but seriously, it's the best analogy to think about just drying out. Like, so I start to behave a little bit like normal people once I don't drink anymore. Once I've pulled alcohol and drugs from my life, I start to can function in society now.
Yeah, that's good.
Which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of the alcoholic will abundantly confirm that these observations would be what? Pointless and academic if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in our mind. And we're going to get into the mental obsession of the disease, which is the crux of the problem, starting next week. And that's what your homework's going to be. But before, we should get some people up here to talk about. There's a solution. Yes, Janie.
You said what was the homework? I'm sorry.
So, the homework is going to be the next assignment 6.
So then, but pages for
It's going to be pages 23